A turning point in Ukraine. Voters in the country's Crimea region are casting ballots on whether to become independent or rejoin Russia. Senator John McCain is just back from Ukraine and joins us now. I know you're sleep deprived, so I especially appreciate your being here.
Thank
this
you.
vote is taking place today.
Yes.
And everybody I've talked to says they're going to vote to re-annex themselves to Russia. I want to play you something and get your reaction. Former Secretary Gates had this to say last week.
I do not believe that Crimea will slip out of Russia's hands.
He thinks Crimea belongs to Putin, and that's it.
Well, I think in the short term, clearly now with the overwhelming military superiority and the actions that Putin has taken, you can't say that there's anything but a fait accompli. But having said that, that doesn't mean that we somehow say, okay, you, Vladimir Putin, can have a major part of a country that your country itself signed an agreement in return for Ukraine's returning their nuclear capabilities, that they guarantee the territorial integrity of it. And by the way, could I just make one comment about this so-called referendum? We have a wonderful ambassador representing the United States in Ukraine. He and I have a bet. I'm saying it's 70% of the vote to join Russia. He's saying 80% of the vote. We'll see what happens. Look, it's a bogus thing. We used to call it plebiscite in the days of Hitler and Stalin. It is a done deal, and we have to. So any more speculation about that?
It makes things even harder, does it not? I mean, what happens now? Yeah, we know it's ginned up, but it gives Putin more sway.
First of all, it's important to say what's happening now. I predicted once Ukraine went the direction it did that Vladimir Putin would not let Sevastopol go. That means taking Crimea. There's a couple of things going on right now. One, the Russians just took a place where the gas supply comes into Crimea. Gas and water have to come from outside Crimea. Second of all, there's 4,000 Ukraine soldiers, military people in bases throughout Crimea that are still surrounded by Russian troops. There's a place called Feodosia that has 600 Marines there. These Marines have said they're not going to surrender. So this thing is not quite over.
Ukrainian Marines.
Ukrainian Marines. Excuse me, Ukrainian Marines. And finally, could I just say, no, there's no contemplation of U.S. military action, but there's a whole lot of things that the United States of America can do.
What will move Putin then?
In the short term, I'm not sure what will. But one other aspect of the present situation. You've just shown on CNN, there's demonstrations in Donetsk, in eastern Ukraine. The question now is, does Putin move into eastern Ukraine and assert control over there, which I'm not sure why, since he's achieved much of his objectives, or does he leave it alone and let the Ukrainian people alone? One of his problems is that if the people of Russia see a thriving, economically strong Ukraine on their border, he's worried that they may be infected with the same disease. But the United States of America, first of all, has to have a fundamental reassessment of our relationship with Vladimir Putin. No more reset buttons, no more tell Vladimir I'll be more flexible. Treat him for what he is. That does not mean reignition of the Cold War, but it does mean treating him in the way that we understand an individual who believes in restoring the old Russian Empire.
Practically speaking, what does that matter? How do you treat him?
Well, I think economic sanctions are a very important step. Identify these kleptocrats. And look, Russia is a gas station masquerading as a country. It's kleptocracy, it's corruption, it's a nation that is really only dependent upon oil and gas for their economy. And so economic sanctions are important. Get some military assistance to Ukrainians, at least so they can defend themselves. Resume the missile defense system in Poland and the Czech Republic. Look at Moldova and Georgia, both of whom are occupied by Russian troops as we speak, a path towards membership in NATO. There's a myriad of steps that we can take, and it'll be very interesting to see to what degree our European friends will join us who are dependent on Russian energy supplies.
I mean, isn't that part of the problem? Is that the economies are intertwined in many ways. First of all, there's some Russian money from the elite certainly does help out in real estate and a number of things in Europe.
And saying that, in the long term, we should be working to get energy supplies to Ukraine and other countries in Europe. We are an abundant now energy exporter. We should be using that. It's a long-term strategy we should be figuring out right now.
I have two questions in 90 seconds. So in terms of helping Ukraine's with weaponry or whatever defense things that they need, I know that you want that. There was a report that the president had not, I'm not sure if it was he rejected it or what, he was reviewing it. Have you spoken to the president? Do you have reason to believe he'd turn that down, or do you think they're willing to do it?
I've spoken to John Kerry. I did not speak to the president. They're giving it serious consideration. And look, that doesn't mean American boots on the ground, although maybe delivering some humanitarian supplies by U.S. aircraft, military aircraft in Kiev might have a kind of a beneficial effect, in many respects. But we need to give a long-term military assistance plan, because God knows what Vladimir Putin will do next, because he believes that Ukraine is a vital part of his vision of the Russian Empire. And we need to understand that and act accordingly. And again, no boots on the ground. It's not the Cold War over again, but we can do a lot of things.
Big help.
Yeah.
And let me ask you, because of just the tone and some of the things you've said lead me to believe that you do agree that Crimea is gone and that now it's about protecting the rest of eastern Ukraine.
Candy, I hate to say that, because obviously it has an effect on those brave people in Ukraine, including those 4,000 that are in bases in Crimea. What I would like to see is a long-term commitment to the freedom and democracy and the assistance we can provide Ukraine, including, over time, regaining Crimea. That would be one of our goals. It is an integral part of that country.
Right. But it's not a short-term goal. The moment.
I'd love to tell you otherwise.
Right. Senator John McCain, thank you.
Thank
Hope
you.
you get some rest.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.